So here we are again on Words with Friends. This is where we talk about a word with one of my friends. And today we have my good friend Jay Baer.
Hello, Phil. Fantastic to be here. I'm excited for our word as well.
Well, we're going to be talking the word remarkable. And the reason I picked that word for you is, well, number one, you are pretty darn remarkable by my definition of the word. And you've been in this world of like reputation, marketing, and all things to do with what other people might think of you for quite some time. So tell me this from the get-go. What does the word remarkable mean to you?
To me, it is worthy of remark, right? Something or somebody or a circumstance that actually merits conversation. We tend to toss remarkable around a lot in life and just sort of say, oh, that was remarkable. The same way that we tend to overuse the word awesome, for example. Awesome means, it is awe-inspiring, and that's usually what actually is the case. And so we say remarkable more often than we mean it. And really, to me, remarkable means it is worthy of a conversation.
Okay, so it's worth talking about, but not necessarily a word that means it was brilliant, it was breathtaking, it was wonderful. It means it was worth talking about, so not always necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, you can be remarkably bad, right? It can be remarkably tragic. There's a lot of things, it's it is an adverb, so there's a lot of things that can be remarkable other than just something that is fantastic and stupendous.
Okay. Now, historically, talking about other people behind their back was like a bad thing, right?
I mean, I don't think so, actually, Phil. I mean, because the idea, word of mouth has been around since the first caveman sold a rock to another caveman, and caveman 3 is like, hey, man, how did you like the rock? And so that was either, yeah, the rock is great, or this guy sold me a bad rock. And so the idea of recommendations and people talking about you behind your back has been around for forever. Of course, sometimes it is bad, and sometimes it's done in a negative way or a pejorative way. But I think every person should seek to actually want people to talk about them behind their back, if you know what I mean.
Okay. Now that makes sense in a business context, right? We're trying to grow brands. We're trying to get people to know more about what we're about. But what about just for the average man, the average woman? Like, we have this world where everybody has some transparency to everybody else's life. How does remarkability play out in that world?
I think it's the same, because you have a choice of who you spend time with. You have a choice of who you have dinner with. You have a choice of who you invite to the holiday party. You have a choice of what and how you spend time. And so to say, hey, this individual in my social circle is remarkable, is different in some way, is unusual in a way that I actually find interesting and compelling. I think that's good. I think we should all seek to be remarkable in every facet of our lives. Now, some people just don't want that, right? Because when you think about remarkable, almost requires you to stand out or be different in some way that is noticeable. And some people just simply don't want to do that. And in fact, in some cultures, being remarkable is considered to be sort of overstepping your boundaries, as opposed to, I would say, in the West, in particular in the US, that striving to be unusual is sort of a badge of honor, where it certainly is not in some parts of the world.
Okay. So you make some bold choices, right? Through things like fashion. Every time I see you, I think I see you wearing something different, some form of suit that forces me to be able to say something past comment about what's Jay wearing today. So is that a conscious decision because you want people to talk about you, or is that just because of how you feel and how you choose to express yourself?
No, it's totally conscious. It's part of the package, right? It's part of a personal brand, quote unquote. I don't like the term personal branding very much, but for conversation purposes, I'll throw it out there. Yeah, it's a choice. It's not an accident. Now, there are some utilitarian rationales for it. I am sort of Frankenstein shaped, which may not come through on the video here, but I'm not the easiest off the rack fit, and so. I realized that by the time I altered everything to fit, I probably just could have had something made just about. And so I just decided to start doing it that way, and have an amazing suit guy who actually lives here in my town, who keeps me in what I would consider to be remarkable level fabrics.
Okay, very nice. Now, what would somebody like you wish that people were saying more about you?
It's such a weird question, because I don't want to say I obsess about that, but I always struggle with understanding what people do say about me. You know what I mean? Like I know I'm a quasi public figure in a very, 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 very tiny microcosm of the world, right? I mean, you know, it's amongst 500 people. Some people know who I am. You know, you get beyond that group of 500, nobody has any idea. It's not like people are stopping me at the grocery store, but you kind of hope that people say something, but you don't really know. And it sort of drives me crazy, right? I wish I had I will tell you an interesting story. You know, I believe that the only thing I have to sell, the only thing that you have to sell, the only thing that anybody who is sort of essentially an educator has to sell is trust. Right. It's not really about what you know. It's about that people trust that you know what you say that you know. And so what we do in my company every year is a trust survey where we talk to a few hundred, sometimes 1,000 marketers, which is typically my audience. And we say, how much do you trust Jay? How much do you trust these other people who do similar work as me? Just to kind of gauge where we are in that trust continuum. And it's actually, if nothing else, prevents me from freaking out and then going into going into a shame spiral. But it is good to have sort of data against that and kind of have a sense of what people actually say. And so I actually spend money to do that kind of research just to ferret it out. But I would say if I had to pick one thing that I wish people talked about more is I wish they talked more about my ability and history in creating new entrepreneurs. One of the things I'm most happy about in my entire career in life, Phil, is that I think now 15 or 16 people that have worked for me have started their own businesses.
Wow.
And I'm really, really enthusiastic and happy about that.
Okay. So if that's something you're super enthusiastic about or something somebody else was enthusiastic about, let's take it away from you for a second, because I know how uncomfortable that can be, which is a crazy set of questions by itself. Is like, why do we want more people to think about us, but we don't like talking about ourselves is a whole other paradox. But if, for example, other people are looking at this thinking they want to become entrepreneurs, they want to be able to go out and go and do more things. You just told me that there are 16 people that are now business owners as a result of touching Baer in some way. And no, I say touching through business purposes, not inappropriately.
Sure.
How do they do that? What are the secret ingredients then? Tell us some of that stuff.
I think part of it is, and I've done some kind of content creation on this topic, but some of it's just some rules that I learned having done this now for 25 years. I've paid a lot of fool's tax, as they say, on the entrepreneurship side. And some of it is saying no instead of yes, right? I think the most important word in life is no, especially when you're an entrepreneur and you're just starting out. The tendency is to say yes to everything because you figure I've got to get paid. I've got to do more. I've got to be active. I've got to make contacts. I've got to be remarkable. And in many cases, it's the wrong approach because you end up spreading yourself too thin and you become known for nothing because you're doing bits and pieces of all these things, right? And so you're not really known for one thing. You're kind of known for 11 things, and that isn't actually a very sharp positioning statement. So no is much more important than yes. I found that to be true. I feel like the best thing you can do is be scared. Like if you're not scared, you're not actually working very hard. And I'd say the third thing that I really try and teach people is to stay as level as possible. I'll show you something I've got right here on my wall. My mom bought me this sign like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and it's right here by my desk. And it says, "Accept that some days you're the pigeon and some days you're the statue." which is my favorite saying in life and in business because it's so true. Like it's never going as good as you think it is, and it's never going as bad as you think it is. And it's very, very helpful to keep that in mind every day.
One of the things I love about something you just said there as well is though you've had 16 people that have worked with you that have now gone on to be able to run their own successful enterprises in some way. And you say that with such pride. When I've heard other people talk about people have worked for them and then gone off to start something in themselves. And no doubt some of these people that now work for themselves, their skill set, their service proposition overlaps yours in some way, shape or form.
Of course.
Like, surely that could be seen as a bad thing though, right? It's like, I taught them all this stuff and now they could potentially have access to my clients, could potentially take some stuff away. They're stealing my knowledge. Like, how does that make you feel?
I think it's short-term thinking and a thinking of scarcity, not abundance. I have believed since I first started my very first company, I was 22 or something like that, much older than you, or when you started your business. But I've always believed that everybody's competition and nobody's competition.
Right.
You know, that truly rising tide lifts all ships. And I've always sort of operated that same way, even when I was in a position to be much more competitive and having, you know, RFPs and things like that we would compete with other companies for and things of that nature. I just never really looked at it that way. I always looked at a competitor as just a collaborator that hasn't gotten it figured out yet. And so I try and operate everything the same way. And I really believe, like, if your goal is to bring somebody smart and talented onto your team and keep them there forever, you're doing it wrong, right? Your goal is to bring smart, talented people onto your team, get them better, and then watch them go on and do something even bigger and better for themselves and their family. And if you operate that way, yeah, you might lose a client here or there, you might lose a little money here or there, but trust me, over the long haul, it comes back in spades, because the 16 greatest advocates I have in this whole world are the 16 people who started with me and now are running their own businesses. You got to, you know, quit worrying about this week or this quarter or this year. You know, probably one of my greatest weaknesses is that I'm always thinking 5 years down the line. And it allows me to sort of make different decisions than some people would make, but sometimes you sort of lose the thread of today as well.
One of the things I love about your work in particular, particularly seeing you on stage or reading any of your specific kind of Baer written materials, is that you're always featuring and showcasing other people. You're not saying, I'm brilliant, look at me, look at me, look at me. What I learn every time I plug into some of your material is like, oh, I should check out that person more so, or I hear about another great business somewhere else in the world. Like, why is that just a key part of your methodology?
I feel like me just standing up there and saying, do it this way because I say so, isn't a very compelling message. Could I make that work? Probably. But I'm just more comfortable telling stories and teaching lessons through the experiences of somebody else, where I'm sort of documenting the lesson as opposed to saying I developed this lesson. And I think partially it's because, you know, I don't invent anything. I'm not a futurist. I'm not a mind reader. I'm not Magellan. I don't discover anything. Like, my only thing that I'm good at really is pattern recognition. So I see a pattern and say, oh, here's a pattern that not enough people understand or know about. Let me explain that pattern so that more people can understand it. Really, all I am is a translator, right? Okay. I'm a trend to execution translator. I'm the guy in the middle. So I find it's easier, certainly more comfortable for me, and I think better outcomes when I do that translation through other people's stories instead of my own stories.
Okay. Have you got any specific examples, maybe where you've shared somebody else's brilliance, but whether it's through stage presentation or whether it's through maybe some of your writing work, where maybe that stranger's then reached back out and perhaps made contact with you, or those people have become friends, or some businesses come from it over time?
Oh, all the time. Not so much on the individual side. I mean, that happens constantly. People that I wrote about or talked about on social media, and then we end up being friends. I mean, it happens so often, especially in my world, right? Sort of the world of digital marketing consultants. I mean, it's almost, it happens on an almost weekly basis. It's just the way that business and that industry coalesces. But for example, what happens consistently is I'll find sort of an instance of a company or an organization or a brand doing something that I find fascinating, that sort of fits into one of the theses of my books or my presentations, and I'll use them as an example on stage. And I'll say, oh, here's a good example of XYZ. And invariably, somebody in the audience will live tweet that and will tag that brand and say, oh, Baer's talking about this brand. And then they'll be like, what? Well, I didn't know who's Baer. Then they'll start to follow, and then it ends up being like this whole relationship, ex post facto, that then we can do more work together and get some inside information. It happens constantly. It's really fun when that occurs.
Okay. So is there a lesson like that anybody fly on the wall listening to me and you talk right now that could take from that as to how they might be able to build their reputation, make themselves more remarkable, instead of saying me, but actually looking to showcase brilliance of others?
Well, I mean, part of it is you only know so many things. So if everything you're going to teach and espouse is only from your own experiences, that's a pretty narrow slice of life. If you say, all right, here is my thesis that I've developed. Now let's seek examples for that thesis across everybody, not just me. It gives you so much more raw material. Plus, you can switch it out all the time. It's one of the things I really enjoy is that I've never given the same presentation twice because I always have different examples, because new examples are either sent to me or I discover them all the time, right? Which is tons of fun. It's almost like writing a newspaper article that never ends, right? Because you're constantly rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it. And it was funny you say, ask like sort of why I do it this way. Maybe it's because my original background was in journalism. I was a journalism major. Like all I wanted to do was go be a major newspaper reporter and be an investigative reporter. That's all I wanted to do as a kid. And so maybe that kind of perspective on more documenting things that are happening as opposed to let me tell you how great I am. Maybe that I never thought about that till this show. So thank you, Phil. I feel like I'm in therapy. I feel like we made a real breakthrough here. That's why I look that way. Yeah.
How many bottles of tequila do you have?
I don't know, probably 40, 50, something like that. A bunch. I put it in my bio that I'm a tequila collector, and that was the greatest thing I've ever done. Because now every time I step on stage, they say that I'm a tequila collector. And what do people send me as thank you gifts now? Free tequila. So my advice is, and here's my real takeaway for the show. If you want to be remarkable, the thing that you like the most, put that in your introduction or your biography. And then it's amazing how that tends to work out. So if you are a big fan of, I don't know, like saltwater fish tanks, I'd be like, hey, and a huge fan of saltwater fish tanks. And guess what people are going to send you? They're going to send you fish. So, think that through. You got to reverse engineer your thank you gift.
That's it. Well, I get it all the time in my world where I drink a lot of bourbon, or at least I like to drink bourbon. Yes. So I now have an ever-growing collection that I'm looking at here that now I'm running out of shelf space for.
Yes.
I'm running out of liver capacity to be able to work through. So this is why I need to get more friends to come and help me drink my whiskey.
You got to come out here to my area of the country and do the Louisville, Kentucky Bourbon Trail. It's not too far from my house.
I've done it a number of times, and I'm there on Thursday next week.
Oh, fantastic! I will be in Prague. I will be in Prague, unfortunately, but we'll one of these days we'll make it happen.
Well, it's the best thing about our work is the places that we are least likely to bump into each other is in the places where we live, right? So
ain't that the truth?
That's the kind of crazy thing. So just thinking about this area of being remarkable, we've talked about some business ideas. Now, what if I'm just a normal person that wants to grow my reputation in some way, wants some of my individual brilliance to be shared more with people in the world? How could I go about that? What might be some steps I could take to either pivot, change, grow, evolve a reputation?
Well, I think you have to understand that remarkability is typically tied to being different, not good. So when it comes to remarkability, good is a 4-letter word, right? So same is lame, as I say all the time. So if you want to be remarkable, if you want to be remembered, if you want to be talked about and discussed, you want your ideas to sort of take flight, it's not about having ideas that are particularly good, although that helps. It's about having an idea or a style or a circumstance or a something that is different than what people expect and what they typically see. Competency does not create conversation. Nobody ever says, let me tell you about this perfectly adequate experience or this perfectly adequate person I met last night. That never, ever happens, right? You remember the weird guy with the crazy suit, or there's a guy at the farmer's market here in my town who goes and buys grocery, he buys vegetables, whatever, every Saturday. And he always has a parrot on his shoulder. He's like the parrot man. Right now, I'm not suggesting that the road to remarkable requires you to buy a parrot, but it wouldn't hurt. It would totally work. I can tell you that right now. It would totally work. So
we're going to see 4,000 people wearing parrots tomorrow, right?
Yes, you should get an affiliate program set up right now. Get a little bit of a commission on that. But you have to have a thing, right? And they say don't try to be somebody else or be yourself because everybody else is taken. That's a really good piece of advice, right? That you have to figure out what is your thing and then focus on that thing. I think when people try to be remarkable, one of the challenges is, and one of the mistakes they make is they try to kind of be remarkable in so many different areas, and then it just waters it down, right? So pick one or two things that people will remember, go deep into that, and then people will actually remember it.
Okay. And I guess some of this could also be, you could be something plus something else, right?
Of course. Yeah.
So like an accountant who loves to fish is more remarkable than an accountant.
An accountant. And I've been saying that, oh my God, I've been talking about that for 10, 12, 15 years now. And I tell people all the time, I used to do a lot of this kind of work. Like how do you, as an executive or a business owner or a person, how do you become more well-known in social media, more remarkable? And I would always say, look, your personal life is so much more interesting than what you do for a job. In 95, 99% of the cases, your personal life is way more interesting. And I would use that exact example, Phil. I'd say, look, the fact that you are a realtor is not interesting, right? There's hundreds or thousands of them in every town. But if you were the realtor who grows prize-winning roses, that I remember, right? You're the rose guy. So on your business card, you put roses. On your website, you put roses. When you pick up a new client, you give them a rose, right? That is your shtick. But people sometimes get uncomfortable with that combination of personal and professional attributes. And like, well, the rose thing has nothing to do with me being a realtor, except it has everything to do with you being a realtor that people remember.
Right. And this then goes on to the fact that people go on and can talk about you a little bit more, right? You've just got a brand new piece of material that I've had some privilege to kind of see from the inside out from your co-author in Talk Triggers, a brand new book coming out, which is this precise scenario, right? It's how do we start more conversations? What is the thing that actually is the catalyst to allow this thing to be able to run on through? So where might there be just some specific examples in everyday life that, unlike just this one specific example with a realtor who has prize-winning roses, other things that people could perhaps consider to create their own talk triggers?
Sometimes it's operations, right? This or how you conduct your life. Maybe it's the crazy party that you have every year. A friend of mine has a yacht rock party every year where he dresses as captain from the Captain and Tennille, and it's like, you know, there's all this nautical theme. Like that's his thing. He's known as like the yacht rock guy in town, right? And so you've got to embrace it, man. You got to own your differentiator. You see people walking around. We talk about the parrot guy. You know, every time you see somebody walking around with a snake wrapped around their neck, you're like, yeah, I remember that guy. I remember the boa constrictor guy.
But this is great if you want to do a parrot or a snake or you like roses. But what if you're just a normal person?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I take umbrage with the fact that you would consider them to not be a normal person. You're just a normal person with a snake, right? I mean, you know, it's okay. It's okay. But maybe you're the person, you know, you just have to figure out, and I'll tell you what works best. The guy with a parrot loves parrots. The guy with the snake loves snakes. The guy who's the captain loves yacht rock. The realtor who grows roses loves roses. So the best way to think about this is to do an audit of what you really love. What's the thing or things that you would do for free forever? Or if you won the lottery, what would you spend your time on forever if nobody was watching? That's your true passion. That's the thing that really makes you work, that's your operating system. That's the thing that should make you remarkable. If you let that thing out and sort of put a spotlight on it publicly, that's the thing that will make you remarkable. What I find really interesting, Phil, is that in most people, that thing that they're really, really passionate about, they tend to keep hidden. In many cases, not every case, but in many cases, they're like, well, that's just kind of the thing I do on the side in my basement on the weekends. And it's for me, it's my thing. I don't like to talk about that with others, but that really typically is your recipe for remarkability. Whatever thing you really, really, really love, that's the thing, because you'll never get tired of it, right? And that's the I think an important point is that if you're going to say this attribute of my personality, of my life is going to be the thing that people remember, you better really like it, because you can't change it very often, because then it gets very confusing for people. So like, I love sport coats, and I'm going to have to love sport coats for a real long time, right? Because I can't like get off that train now, right? And just like you can't be like, well, today, from now on, it's gin. I'm no longer drinking bourbon. Now I'm drinking gin, right? And everybody's like, well, I thought he was the bourbon guy, right? So you got to be prepared to live this for a few years. So you better like it.
So your thing, if you won the lottery and could do everything you wanted to do all day, every day, is to hang out in sports coats.
My thing would be, if I could do anything. All right, I've never said this before publicly. My team knows this, and my wife does. I don't think anybody else. Nobody's watching this yet, right? All right. If I could do any job, I would be the host of the Price is Right game show. or really any game show. That's all I really want to do is to host a game show. Like Drew Carey is currently the host of The Price is Right. I think we're about the same age, unfortunately. But if anything ever happens to Drew, God bless Drew, I'm in. First call I'm making is Price is Right. Like I would love to host a game show. That's my thing.
You'd be so good at it. You'd be so good. I'd like to watch. I don't like game shows, but I'd watch this one.
Thank you. Let's invent one. Let's do one together.
Let's do it. And I think we're going to put this out in the world, and something's now going to happen, and you're going to get a call one day, and it's going to be like,
Jay. If I got a call from Sony or whoever produces that show, like, hey, we need a fill-in. Man, I would owe you big time, Phil.
Well, it might even be different to that. They might have like named it something very slightly different. Like
Yes.
kind of the price is kind of close to this.
Right, it's adequate. Price is adequate.
Very good, very good. Jay, your time has been really, really precious to say, and I'm super grateful for what you've shared. I learned stuff, and I'm sure everybody else listening in. But on Words with Friends, there's a question that I ask of everybody. Nobody knows it's coming, and I want to ask this one of you and see what we get. So,
right.
What's your favorite word and why?
My favorite word is bludgeon, which sounds quite horrible, but I just love the way it sounds. I just, the actual, the way you say it and the sort of moves that your tongue and your lips have to make sounds like the word. Just the whole thing really, I've loved it forever, ever since I was a little kid. My mom is an English teacher and has like 1,700 million master's degrees in English. So I was the kid who was always corrected on grammar and sentence structure at the dinner table, but bludgeon would be my answer.
That's a great answer, bludgeon. And I wasn't expecting it. Okay. When you see some of our other friends and their words, you're going to see how remarkable that choice of word really is.
Their word is like happy, puppies or whatever. Hey, you ask me an honest question, I give you an honest answer.
I'm going to see if I can make a sentence.
My second favorite word is phlegm, because I just love the way it's spelled.
Oh, with the PH, right? And
PHLEGM. Yeah, it's like a complete train wreck. It has nothing to do with how it sounds. It's the classic English word. You don't notice it because we grew up in it, but English is one of the hardest languages to learn because there's so many exceptions, and it's just kind of everything as well. But in this case, you say it differently.
Yeah, you try going to Ireland and people giving you their names, and then you say spell how? Okay,
yeah.
Got it. Book signings in Ireland are always fun to me. But yeah, final question, I guess, is on this area of being remarkable, or the word remarkable, is there anything you want to ask of me that we'll do while the camera's still on?
Why do you care so much about words?
Why? Because I believe they have the power to change the world. And I believe that just if more people could pay more attention towards the things that came out of their mouth, the things that came out of their keyboards, then they'd have a lot more influence, and perhaps could use more of that stuff to do good things. And it just fascinates me sometimes how somebody can present something some way, somebody can present something completely different. They can both have the best intentions, the best products, the best everything that they might want at that moment in time, but the words are the difference. And that just keeps me confused and passionate. And I think if I wasn't doing what I would do for work right now, I'd do something similar just for fun.
Well, I think what you should do is walk around with different words on your shoulder. And that would be, it's like your version of the parrot.
Right. I could just be like a walking Scrabble board or something.
Yes. I love that.
I could start a game show called Words with Friends, and you could host it. You could host it.
I'm in. I think you should have a Scrabble suit. So on the back of your suit, it's magnetic patch.
Yeah.
And it's got letters. People can walk up behind you and spell things on your back.
And we could do triple word score, all that kind of stuff could be going down. And I think they'd be okay with this, right? Scrabble wouldn't mind if we make a game show out of it.
They've been knocked off so many times. They'll be fine. They're not going to care.
Jay Baer, thank you for joining us. It's always a treat. Look forward to catching up with you on the road someday soon.
Thanks, buddy.